So good afternoon, everyone, or maybe you're late good morning, I don't know. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar to discuss the Rural and Native American Initiative that's included as a funding priority under Enterprise's 2017 Letters of Interest opportunity. My name is Kate Dippenderfer. I'm a Senior Grant Specialist here at Enterprise, and I'm joined by Sarah Torcell, our Program Director, and we'll be talking to you about the Rural and Native American Initiative and its funding priorities under this LOI. So before we get going, just want to let everybody know that today's presentation is being recorded and will be available as a resource along with the PowerPoint that we'll be showing, and it should be ready within the next day or so. All of the phones have been muted upon entry. If you have any questions, we're asking you to submit them to the chat box on the bottom right of the screen. So we have a fairly large group on the line, so we'll try to get to everyone's question, but if we happen to run out of time, we'll be sure to get back to you, and we'll also give you some contact information in case you want to follow up with us before then. So with that, I'm turning everything over to Sarah.
Thank you, Kate. So good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from a very rainy and gloomy Columbus, Ohio. As Kate said, my name is Sarah Torcell, and I am a Program Director with our National Initiative team. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar to go over the Rural and Native American program areas and for an overview of the 2017 application process. So the purpose of today's webinar, so the agenda for today, go back one slide. The agenda for today is a quick overview of the purpose of the webinar, brief information about Enterprise Community Partners and the Rural and Native American Initiative, about the grant funding program, and then the bulk of the webinar will be an overview of the letters of interest. We'll talk about eligibility requirements, general information, priorities, geographies, our program areas specific to Rural and Native American, and the application materials and submission process. I do want to point out that there was a very large webinar yesterday hosted by our Grants and Contracts Department where they went into further detail than I'm going to go into today on the application process. So if you missed that webinar, it is recorded and it is available on our website through our Resource Center. And if you have any problems locating that recording, please just let us know and we'll make sure you get a copy of that. So I'll also talk about the scoring criteria, and then we'll talk about timeline, resources, reminders, and then most importantly, leave room for questions at the end. So the purpose of today really is to provide an overview of the grant program, the LOI application, its requirements, and then the Rural and Native American program areas. And as I just said, most importantly, answer questions posed by the applicants. So this warning sign here is in case I get stage fright and flub anything I'm saying. This is just to let you know that whatever is in the request for letters of interest supersedes anything that you hear from me today. So about Enterprise Community Partners, here is a pic of our founder, Jim Rouse, and his wife, the co-founder, Patty Rouse. They founded Enterprise in 1982. Enterprise is a national nonprofit organization, and since 1982, we've been working to improve communities and lives through affordable housing development and creating communities where families and individuals thrive. For over 30 years, we have created over 375,000 homes and invested over $28 billion in communities across the United States. So some of the activities that the Rural and Native American Initiative are involved in to support the Enterprise mission are we are working to create healthy, safe, green, affordable housing and increasing opportunities for economic advancement. We work to create opportunities for the acquisition and rehabilitation of rural rental 515 projects. We support the development of permanent supportive housing projects and strategies. Some of you may have heard of our Pathways Home Supportive Housing Toolkit, but that is a great resource we've used for several years for permanent supportive housing. And most recently, we've begun to support climate and cultural resiliency through the placement of AmeriCorps Vistas at partner organizations. These are just some of the rural and Native American activities that we're involved in. So about the funding program in general. This funding is made available through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Section 4 Capacity Building for Community Development Program. That's a mouthful, so we're just going to call it Section 4 from here on out. The purpose of the Section 4 program is to enhance the technical and administrative capabilities of the CDCs, CHODOs, and organizations serving Native American populations with a defined mission that includes affordable housing for tribes, tribally designated housing entities, or tribal housing authorities. All these groups must carry out community development and affordable housing activities for the benefit of households of low income, as defined as 80% AMI or below for this program. Applicants must meet the eligibility requirements as described in Appendix A of the LOI. So to break that down a little bit, the HUD requirements are, as I said earlier, the organizations that are eligible are CDCs, CHODOs, and organizations serving Native American populations. And then the enterprise, we really want to see that you have demonstrated staff capacity. So if you are a board-driven organization with no staff, you will likely have to get a fiscal agent or fiscal sponsor in order to be eligible for this grant. But there is more information in the LOI about fiscal agents and sponsors. If you have any questions or unsure of your eligibility, you can refer to Appendix A of the LOI. There is a tutorial on our enterprise website in the Resource Center for eligibility requirements. And of course, you can email the RFP mailbox or myself as well. My email contact information will show up on the last slide. So, you know, in a nutshell, what I just talked about, the applicants must meet these following program requirements. The activity must address the needs of low-income households as required under Section 4. Again, that's 80% AMI or lower. Low-income households is defined as a single person who may be elderly, displaced, disabled, elderly, or as any other single person, a group of persons residing together, or any persons occupying a housing unit. Again, you must meet these requirements in order to be eligible for funding. So these two are absolute requirements in order to apply. So just some general information about the letters of interest. It's a two-step application process that we go through consisting of the LOI phase, which we are in now, of course, and then the full application phase. The Rural and Native American Initiative covers the entire nation. However, the proposed activities must take place in a rural area. Anticipated awards are ranging from $25,000 to $100,000. The average award under our program is expected to be around $50,000. If awarded a grant, the period of performance will begin on September 1 and will have a general duration of 12 to 24 months. You may only submit one application, and you may apply under only one program area. Applicants that have received funding and or have pending applications with other Section 4 intermediaries, those being LISC and Habitat for Humanity International, will not receive funding for the same cost under this LOI. So I just want to clarify that that does not mean that if you receive LISC funding that you are not eligible to apply. It just means that Enterprise and LISC cannot fund the same cost for the same project. So you're still eligible to apply if you receive LISC or Habitat funding. I put here the matching component. I'm going to talk about it briefly. It's not something I'm going to get into a lot of detail at this time because it's not something we're asking for at this time. But if you are invited to submit a full RFP, you will you'll be given more information on match. So just very briefly to let folks know if they're not familiar with enterprise grants in the Section 4 program, the program does require enterprise to raise match from private sources for every dollar of Section 4 spent. Enterprise then in turn requests that grantees demonstrate their ability to provide matching dollars. So if you are awarded funding, we would expect or have anticipation that grantees can help enterprise meet our requirements to HUD. But again, this is not something that's required at this LOI phase, but I did just want to put it on folks' radar that there is a matching component with these grants. And then just a general sort of housekeeping note that all LOI documents are available on Enterprise website, and when we get to the end of the presentation, there are several resources that I can talk to you about that are available. So market priorities and geographies of interest. I wanted to point out that this year's process is slightly different than last year's, and that rural and Native American activities are folded sort of into the market RFPs. So for the purpose of this LOI, we're referring to rural and Native American as a market. So each market has identified program areas that they are most interested in supporting. And then there's more in-depth information about each program area in that supplement. So it's very important that you know to go, and I think it's on the next slide, but you know, there's a section in the LOI where the geographies are listed out alphabetically. So the rural and Native American is right between Pacific Northwest and Southeast. So there's a spot for you to click on the link, and then it'll bring up our rural supplement. Okay, can you go to the next slide? So this is what that looks like. So I want to make sure everybody gets the program information from the rural supplement. So just to reiterate a couple points about rural and Native American, the funding is available to applicants operating nationwide. Again, the project must meet the definition of rural, and that definition is here on the screen, and then it's also in the LOI. And if you're still unsure after looking at the definition, we have this great resource, and it is also on our, in the LOI. You can plug a zip code right into the link here where the arrow is pointing. And then if it lights up pink, that means you're in an urban area, and that project would not qualify under the Rural and Native American Initiative. You know, we're still a resource here if you do have questions if your project qualifies, but with the definition in the map, that should help you make that determination as well. So program areas. The Rural and Native American Initiative focuses on the following areas: building and designing sustainable communities, health and housing, affordable housing production and preservation, promoting housing and resiliency in communities of opportunities, multi-year capacity building for Native American communities, and Native homeownership. And I'm going to get into each of these, but again, I want to stress the importance of the market supplement for rural and Native American, because information you find in there is specific to rural and Native American and doesn't necessarily fit into some of the other program areas. So please make sure you look specifically to rural and Native American. So first up, building and designing sustainable communities. The 2015 Green Communities criteria has been at the core of our commitment to housing quality. As such, we are looking to build the capacity to implement best practices embedded within and inspired by the Green Communities criteria, with a particular focus on efficiency, health, and resiliency. So some activities that we would support under this program are groups that are taking measures to promote resilience in their design and development process, That could include developing operation models for resilience in emergency situations, housing displaced residents, and operating procedures for property management. We would also be interested in supporting projects that support a holistic, portfolio-wide approach to environmental sustainability, such as green building, culturally appropriate designs, green operations, maintenance, and property management. We anticipate that we will award 2 to 5 organizations $50,000 under this program area. Health and housing. So at Enterprise, we also recognize that the lack of affordable housing and inadequate income in rural areas can lead to homelessness. Unlike in many urban areas, the rural homeless assistance systems lack the infrastructure to provide comprehensive care to those experiencing homelessness. So here we're really looking to build the capacity of organizations who serve the populations that could stand to benefit from this type of housing, such as older adults, homeless, formerly homeless, disabled, veterans, and other vulnerable populations. An example of an activity we would support are groups that are working to create and cultivate a development team that will undertake a permanent supportive housing project. And we, also recognize that in many rural communities, the senior population is increasing and our partners are working to meet the needs of the aging long-term residents. So to that end, we would look to partner with groups who are working with healthcare providers to improve the physical health of the buildings for aging in place. We're also at Enterprise working on developing a permanent supportive housing peer-to-peer network. So if successful in receiving a grant for permanent supportive housing, we would ask that you participate in this peer-to-peer learning exchange. And just FYI, this group would be open to others if you did not receive a grant, if you're interested in being part of this cohort. So we will make, again, approximately 2 to 5 grants at $50,000 under the Health and Housing Program. Affordable housing production and preservation. So with the increasing number of projects reaching the end of the tax credit cycle, maturing USDA mortgages, as well as aging projects, Enterprise is really focused on ensuring the long-term sustainability of affordable housing developers and owners, as well as affordable housing portfolios. We would support this effort for groups who are working on pre-development activities, on complicated preservation transactions, in particular the acquisition of distressed or affordable housing portfolios, and we will also support activities for groups who are working on the development or preservation of farm worker or migrant and seasonal worker housing. Same as the other two categories, we anticipate making 2 to 5 grants at $50,000 under this level. And you'll see from our rural supplement, there also is a learning opportunity available under this program with some of our partners that are funded directly from our markets working on preservation. So next up is promoting housing and resiliency in communities of opportunity. So first, you might be asking, what is a community of opportunity? At Enterprise, we believe that every individual and family should have access to an affordable home in a community connected to opportunity. Opportunity begins when people have a safe, healthy, and affordable place to call home. Opportunity then grows with access to good schools, jobs, and health care. So what we really mean by that is taking a comprehensive approach to community development. And so we would like to support organizations taking this approach to create housing that combines multiple elements such as design, green building, sustainable practices, culture, health, and access to opportunities such as education and jobs. We'll also like to support community-based organizations in their efforts to create sustainable and resilient communities by leveraging creative placemaking strategies to strengthen the connection between culture and climate resilience. So what is creative placemaking? Creative placemaking is the intentional integration of the arts, culture, creativity, and design in a comprehensive community development. So these are really strategies that help shape the built environment and strengthen a community. So for example, an organization may promote resiliency around a project such as solar panels by incorporating art and education within the community. Enterprise recently had a climate and culture resiliency RFP, and there were a lot of really compelling proposals from our rural and Native American partners. So I see that this is something that rural partners are engaged in and working on. So the next program area is called MultiYear Capacity Building for Native American Communities. And this program is really the next step up from the program area I just talked about, promoting housing and resiliency in communities of opportunities, in that it's a larger multi-year grant, but covers the same type of activities that I just described. So this is really about transforming neighborhoods. Similar to what I just said, a transformative project is defined by taking a comprehensive approach for housing and connected communities, combining several elements like design, green, sustainable, culture, health, and access to opportunities. Some examples that we would potentially fund under here is if a group maybe wanted to do sustainable master planning and design recommendations for their affordable housing and other community development. This particular program area has some extra criteria, so I want to go over that really quick. This particular program is targeted specifically to organizations working with Native Americans. You must have received a grant from Enterprise before in order to be eligible to apply under this category. So if you have never received an Enterprise, if you've never received a grant from Enterprise, you should not apply under this category at this time. Also, if you've received funding under this program area previously, you are not eligible to apply again. And because these are larger targeted grants, award recipients will be asked to participate in regular check-ins with Enterprise staff. We do anticipate only making 1 to 2 awards at the $100,000 level under this program. Native homeownership. Homeownership rates for Native Americans trail the national average. This leaves a large percentage of the population struggling in unaffordable apartments or living in inadequate housing. So under the Native Homeownership Program, Enterprise wants to support organizations that are working to develop or expand their homeownership programs to promote homeownership, also encouraging the participation and development of state or regional tribal homeownership coalitions with the goal of increasing Native homeownership on or off the reservations. We would support staff time for organizations that are working to implement homebuyer education, credit counseling, homebuyer readiness, everything that goes with homebuyer education. Also supporting groups who are marketing homeownership opportunities and developing an expertise in mortgage finance programs. We anticipate making 2 to 5 grant awards at $50,000 under this program. Okay, so just some key points on the submission process. Again, this presentation does not go into the level of detail from yesterday's webinar, so we're happy to get that recording for you if you need additional information. I just wanted to highlight some of the key points. So make sure you review and follow your instructions and the format requirements on page 1 of the LOI narrative. If you do not follow these instructions and format requirements, your application will not be reviewed. The LOI narrative must be uploaded through the LOI online submission form. And another resource here is this LOI submission guide, which talks about the LOI submission form, the instructions, and kind of walks you through what you need to do to apply. So this is one of the areas I want to make sure I point out because the process is a little different than last year. Applicants are required to select rural and Native American under the market of interest. So you may have a project, let's say in the Gulf Coast, that's a rural project. If you want the Rural and Native American Initiative to review that, you need to select rural and Native American as your market area of interest as opposed to the Gulf Coast in this example. Another very important note, which I touched on a little bit, is when on the online submission form, when you're selecting your program area of interest that you are applying for, you must select a program area that begins with rural and Native American. So there is some overlap of some of the program areas, right? There's building and design and health and housing and preservation and production that are similar to rural and Native American, but you really need to select rural and Native American in order for the rural and Native American team to get that application. So there's just a couple areas of overlay, but again, stressing rural and Native American and making sure you're looking at the market supplement. So applications will be evaluated against 4 criteria. I'm not going to go into great detail, but the criteria are basically how does the proposed program align with the enterprise funding priorities, what's the impact of proposed program or project, the capacity of the applicant, and how an applicant plans to address racial equity. Those are the 4 criteria. And just a side note, Enterprise held a webinar at the end of April on racial equity, and a recording of that presentation is also available on our website if you'd like to access it. Each question in the LOI narrative aligns directly with the criteria, and this year we are grading on a 5-point scale, with 1 being a minimal response and 5 being exceptional. Decisions to move an applicant forward are based on eligibility, responsiveness to the criteria, alignment with priorities, and comments from reviewers. The total number of applicants received is just contingent upon the number and quality of LOIs received. So some very important dates. The submission deadline for the LOI applicants is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on May 31st. So on the West Coast, that's 5, and Mountain Time, it's 6. Make sure you meet the deadline. Late applications will not be accepted. If you are invited back to submit a full RFP, you will be notified by July 10th, and then full applications will be due on August 7th. Here's just a list of some online resources for the applicants. We've got the full application, we have frequently asked questions, we have the guide for the LOI submission, eligibility requirements, grants guide, and then the criteria. You know, the grants guide is a really good resource if you have questions about match, about allowable, unallowable expenses. You know, we're not really getting into that here at this time, but there are resources available, and as we've said, you can email any questions to the RFP mailbox or to myself as well. So last reminders, you can only submit 1 proposal under 1 program area. Enterprise will only consider LOIs from applicants that have met both of those threshold requirements that I talked about earlier, that you followed instructions, format requirements, and answered all 5 questions on the LOI narrative. So I'll just, one thing I will say, your narrative should be in Word, not PDF. Again, there's more information on the specifics, but little details like that do count. So please do pay attention to those specifics. Your application must be submitted online via the LOI online submission form, again, by May 31st, 8 p.m. The application portal will close down, so if you do not get your application in at that time, it will not be accepted. So if you have questions specific to the Rural and Native American program, you can send them to me, and here is my contact information here, as well as on the market supplement. General questions can be answered by the RFP mailbox, and the frequently asked questions list that Grants and Contracts is managing will be updated and posted on our website every Friday through May 26th. So now we can open it up for questions. As Kate said, if you have questions, you can send them into the chat box, and she will read them off, and we can try to answer your questions.
Okay, so we have gotten a few questions. The first one, what happens if part of your tribal population is inside a city area and then also rural? Do you only, sorry everybody, I need to just slowly scroll. Do you only help the ones living in the rural areas even if they are all part of the same tribe?
Yes, we have to, these funds have to be in a rural area. If you are working in an urban setting but working with Native Americans, you can still apply directly through a market, but these funds have to be used for a project in a rural area.
Okay. Next question. Where would a housing needs assessment file under in the programs?
You mean like a type of activity?
I think yeah, maybe where that would best fit under one of the existing program areas.
Well, we have to be careful about guiding applicants to apply under a certain area. I would encourage you to take a look at the program descriptions. But it seems like an activity like that might make sense under promoting housing and resiliency in communities of opportunity.
Okay. Next question. Does the replacement or placement of manufactured homes in cooperatively owned manufactured home parks fit within any of these categories?
Yes.
Is there a logical program area for pre-development costs, such as architecture and design, for a new construction, veteran supportable, affordable development?
It sounds like that could fit under production and preservation. But yeah, I mean, the majority of our Section 4 grants are used for pre-development, so it just depends on what type of project it is. If it's a green project for pre-development, then you might want to look at the building and designing sustainable communities. I know some projects could fit in multiple buckets, so you know there really is such an overlay to everything we do. So you really have to kind of look through and read carefully over the program descriptions and decide where that particular project or program best fits. Just scrolling through to see if there are any others. I think you must have answered all the questions yesterday, Kate, on the webinar.
We did get a question about what the official definition of a rural area is. Sarah, you mentioned that that definition is in the LOI. It's on page 12. Okay, I think we might have some new ones. Regarding the racial equity criteria, isn't construction of affordable housing on tribal land sort of self-evident regarding racial equity? So Enterprise has been working with a consultant who presented yesterday during the larger LOI overview. So I think any racial equity questions that we receive would be best if you could send them to the RFP@enterprisecommunity.org mailbox. We want to make sure that we give you the correct answer, so we'll working with Dwayne Marsh, who's our racial equity consultant. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. Let's see. Okay, here's one. On yesterday's call, it was mentioned about fiscal agents and fiscal sponsors. Can we utilize something like that if we have never received a grant from you before? So the answer is yes. If you haven't received a grant from Enterprise before, you could still get a grant working with either a fiscal agent or a fiscal sponsor. There's some additional information about the distinction between the two in the LOI on page 20, which may help you figure out, you know, if you decide to go that route, if an agent or a sponsor would be better suited for you. We've had a few people asking if they're going to be able to download the presentation. The answer is yes. A recording of this webinar and the PowerPoint slides will be available for you online on our website. And if you want to email us again at rfp@enterprisecommunity.org, or if you want to email Sarah, we'll be happy to share that information with you once we get everything edited and ready to share. Where can we find detailed requirements of the LOI, such as page limit, font size, etc.? So that information is on the LOI narrative, which is Exhibit A. The first page covers the instructions, format requirements, and then we give you an example of how we'd like the narrative to look. Many Native communities experience overcrowding. Does Enterprise recognize this in lieu of homelessness? You guys, hello?
Kate?
Sarah, are you there?
I've been lost for a while. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, my phone went completely dead, so I had to call back in on my cell phone. Talk about technical difficulties. Yes, the overcrowding question, yes.
Yes, okay.
Sorry about that.
Is completing the environmental assessment for a new housing development an eligible expense?
Yes, that's an eligible expense.
Okay. I don't see any new questions, so again, if you have any questions, please submit them to the chat box. Here we go. In the Affordable Housing Production and Preservation Program area, does Enterprise want to focus solely on multifamily properties, or are single-family homes also acceptable?
Single-family homes are also acceptable. Yeah. So focus is preservation and production. We maybe slightly lean towards preservation, but production is definitely acceptable for single-family.
I am not seeing any other questions. So again, if you have them, please submit them to the chat box. Sarah, is there anything that you want to say before we wrap up?
Just a thank you to everyone for joining us today. hopefully the resources that we gave you today help assist you in submitting your application. There are many resources available for you. Please contact our female mailbox. Our friend Kate here is managing a lot of the questions through the mailbox, so she's a great resource. You can email me and check out our website. And we really look forward to reviewing the applications.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.